Hey everyone, this is Louis and welcome to the Ultimate Brand Bible, your ultimate space for free advice, tips, tricks, hacks, how-to guides, templates, and resources on branding to help you get your brand to the next level. And you can start that process for your brand today by hitting the subscribe button and the little bell notification to make sure you don't miss any of the great stuff that we'll be putting out on a regular basis just for you. So without further ado, let's get branding. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at how many colors should a logo have. So let's get straight to it. How many colors should a logo have? The optimal number of colors that a logo should have is between 1 and 3, with at least one primary color and up to 2 secondary colors. Although a logo could technically have more than 3 colors, 3 or less would be my general recommendation. So there's a lot to discuss, so let's get straight into it. Color psychology. So these are essentially colors and their meanings. Colors have an entire psychology behind them when it comes to branding, and this is a great starting point when deciding the colors of your logo. Now, I've been in a position many times in my career where I had to talk clients out of using their favorite colors in their logo instead of using colors that are best suited for their brand identities. Now, purple, as great as a color as it may be, just doesn't quite convey brand confidence that you want when you're trying to promote the plumbing business, for example. So, that being said, you choose your primary brand color based on the color theory we'll be going into now, as much as possible, just in order to establish the most effective color to convey your brand and your identity in your logo design. So let's get into all of that. I'll just briefly run through all of these. Each color I'll mention, and then we'll go through their positives, their negatives, and a quick example of each. So red, positive, power, passion, energy, fearlessness, strength, and excitement. Negatives, anger, danger, warning, defiance, aggression, and pain. And examples, Coca-Cola, Virgin, and Target. Red is also very popular for all fast food brands, fast food restaurants. The whole slew of them, most of them actually have red. Just something interesting to keep in mind. Now, let's look at orange. The positives, courage, confidence, warmth, innovation, friendliness, energy. Negatives, deprivation, frustration, ignorance, sluggishness. There's a few more, but this is examples: Nickelodeon, Amazon, Harley Davidson. And let's get to yellow. Positives, optimism, warmth, happiness, creativity, intellect, extroversion. Negatives, irrationality, fear, caution, anxiety, frustration, cowardice. And examples: McDonald's, UPS, Hertz, and Shell. Now let's look at green. Positives, health, hope, freshness, nature, growth, prosperity. Negatives, boredom, stagnation, envy, blandness. Some examples: BP, Land Rover, and Monster. Let's look at turquoise. Communication, positives, communication, clarity, calmness, inspiration, self-expression, healing. Negatives, boastfulness, secrecy, unreliability, etc. You can get all of these things from ultimatebrandbible.com in our free resources. We have this color chart. You can just download the PDF from there, completely free, just to put it out there. And then turquoise examples: Tiffany & Co., Pampers, and us, Ultimate Brand Bible. So now let's look at blue. So positive, trust, loyalty, dependability, logic, serenity, security. Negatives, coldness, emotionlessness, uncaring, unappetizing. And then examples: Facebook, American Express, Oral-B. Let's quickly look at purple. Wisdom, luxury, wealth, spirituality, imaginative, sophistication. Negatives: introversion, decadence, suppression, inferiority, extravagance, moodiness. Examples: Yahoo, Cadbury, Hallmark. Let's look at pink. Imaginative, passion, transformation, creative, innovation, balance. Some negatives: outrageousness, nonconformity, flippancy, impulsiveness, eccentricity. And examples: Barbie, Cosmopolitan, Victoria's Secret. Just a few more to go here. Brown: seriousness, warmth, earthiness, reliability, support, authenticity. I don't think earthiness is actually a word, but it might be. If it's not, we're going to pen it into the dictionary today. Negatives: humorlessness, heaviness, unsophisticated, sadness, dirtiness, conservativeness. Examples: Nespresso, Hershey, M&M's. And then we look at black: sophistication, security, power, elegance, authority, substance. Negatives: oppression, coldness, menace, heaviness, evil, mourning. That does not sound good. Examples: Nike, Apple, and Chanel. Now, the negatives really come up in these brand identities, but it's just important to put it out there. And we have gray: timeliness, neutrality, reliability, balance, intelligence, strength. Unconfident: dampness, depression, hibernation, lack of energy, blandness. And examples of gray is Nintendo, Microsoft, Mercedes-Benz. Now, the last one here on our list is white. The positives: cleanliness, clarity, purity, simplicity, sophistication, and freshness. And then negativity, the negative ones, we look at sterility, unfriendliness, elitism, isolation, emptiness. And some examples: Tesla, Mini, and Crocs. Now, I mentioned in the beginning, one primary color at least, and up to 2 secondary colors. So let's just go into what is primary and secondary colors and how do they work in your logo. So primary colors represent the core of your brand and your identity. These are usually the main colors used in a brand's logo and should be chosen very carefully and purposefully. Brands usually have between 1 and 3 primary colors, but my suggestion and one of my expert tips is always to stick to one primary brand color. You don't want to create confusion with your customers. Not saying that if you have 3 it'll create confusion, but I mean, just simplicity is key, in my opinion. Now, secondary brand colors are used to complement your primary colors or color. Brands usually have multiple secondary colors, but once again, my suggestion is always to try and stick to a maximum of 2 secondary colors to complement your primary color. Secondary colors don't necessarily feature in a brand's logo, although they can and sometimes do, but rather in the rest of the brand's identity elements and collaterals. Now, there's an extra one here I want to mention. Tertiary colors are often used in a brand's environment, like the office space, or your store, etc. And also to diversify the big publications where lots of data needs to be displayed, like graphs and charts. So if you're producing lots of pamphlets and brochures, flyers, all those kinds of things with lots of information, your colors could become very monotonous. And to break it up, you can add these tertiary colors just as a flair, I would call it. Splash of color and flair. So this is an example I used in our series on a complete guide to creating a brand identity, where we also went through colors. So let me get the mouse here and let me show you here. This would be an example of a primary color, and then this would be secondary colors matching the primary color. So this is basically a color palette of a brand identity, one of these. So this is a few examples. Now, color harmonies. How do we come up with the secondary colors based on the primary color? Majority of the cases you would follow this color harmony theory. You don't have to, but I would suggest, because these do tend to work together very well. Choosing a secondary and tertiary colors that would complement your primary brand color can be tricky sometimes, but luckily we can follow basic color codes based on the color wheel to determine our secondary colors. Now let's look at what that looks like. See, here you have monochromatic. So if your color is red, then you just have red. Dual complementary. If your color is red, you can follow this here, and this would be your secondary brand colors. That's kind of a pukey green and blue here. And then here we have a few more. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see here how they all kind of work together. Here you have 3, Here you have also 3, but it's different, one shade almost. Here you have, also 3, but it's spread out and complementary. A few different variations of this. Now let's get to a few pro tips on choosing logo colors. Now, number 1, let your brand guide you. Now this will relate back to colors and their meaning in a way, but I want to get it slightly more philosophical with this tip. So I usually advise my clients who are struggling to choose a primary brand color to first complete the mission statement step of the brand identity. Now, once you have your mission statement and you have it very nicely written and it just all makes perfect sense and almost brings a tear to your eye how good it is done, then my advice would be is to get somebody with a very inspiring voice to actually read out the mission statement for you out loud a few times while you lay on your back in a comfortable position with your eyes closed, and you try and let the mission statement and that calming, soothing, inspiring voice kind of guide you. Now, the process, for me, the process usually helps to visualize the many elements of your brand along with a strong emotional response. And this might help you to see the color clearly, that would represent your brand at its core. Obviously, based on your mission statement and the kind of feelings and visual and emotional responses you're getting from the mission statement. Now, it might sound a bit out there, but I can guarantee you I have actually had some success with that. So that's why I thought I would just share this with you. For those of you who think this is complete baloney, just move on to number 2, set a mood. Your colors should set a mood. Once again, I discussed this in the complete guide to creating a brand identity, which you should check out. If you haven't, I will put a link here or something pop up in this video for you to check out. Now, along with your brand's mission statement, you can create a mood board of how you want to see your brand and how you want it to be represented through your brand identity. This usually involves a lot of colors, and you will be able to quickly draw inspiration from it to determine which colors would represent your brand the most. Now, let me show you some examples of how environment plays a role. You can see here, just based on the environment that you would choose to represent your brand the best. It could be your internal office environment, like this example here, something like this. It could be that the colors were determined first and then the office space was designed around this, or you could design the office space around your feeling of how you want your brand to feel like, and then you can just extrapolate the colors from there, or you just take it from natural elements that relate to your brand. Beach holidays, maybe it's a beach, maybe it's a traveling agency who does beach holidays, etc. We're not going to go through all these examples, but let me get to tip number 3. Keep it simple. Like many other things in branding and marketing world, simplicity is key. That being said, it doesn't always mean that when something is simple, that it's easy. Quite the contrary. Coming up with something simple, whether it's a color for your brand or simple logo icon, it usually starts out with many complicated designs and options, and after countless revisions of stripping away what's not needed, then only do we usually end up with something that looks like it only took a few minutes to put together. Now, keep your primary and secondary brand colors simple, and that's the reason why I usually suggest limiting it to 1 primary color and 2 secondary colors. You can say more with less, if communicated correctly, of course, than what you can say with a lot, but it's confusing and not well communicated. Keep that in mind. Expert pro tips coming your way. Now, number 4, be original. Be original. Don't be afraid to choose a color that's outside of the norm or outside of what's expected. But be careful not to go take this tip too far though, which I've seen happen many times. But don't play it safe and end up with something similar to everyone in your space. And the last one here, be consistent. Consistency is key to any brand identity. Once you have your brand colors defined, make sure that you have all the exact specifications and color codes preferably Pantone colors, so that all your brand and marketing collaterals will follow the same color specifications and create the brand consistency that you want. This is very important. If you're going to be putting your colors on a lot of different things, you want the color to be the one that you chose and not a version of it. Because if you print something with an offset printer and you print it with a home printer and you print it with the laser printer at the office, and somebody else draws it, and then you end up with kind of the same color but completely different when you put them all together. You don't want that to happen. Be consistent. And the last tip I have for you before we conclude this is own it. You got to own it. Whichever color you choose, colors or color you end up going with, you have to own it, or at least aim to. And I'll give you one example here now. This is, very far out, but think of Coca-Cola as an example. I think it's safe to say that Coca-Cola owns the color red. Similarly, I think McDonald's owns yellow, and Nike and Apple own black and gray. Now, this is obviously years and years of building up a brand and brand identity and brand image to get to that point where you can actually own a color. But I think Coca-Cola has achieved it, and some of the others I have here on the list. So once again, if you're original enough and you carve out a color that nobody else has in your industry, it does make it a bit easier, but still it has to follow tip number one, which is letting your brand guide it. And those are my pro tips for choosing logo colors for your brand identity. And for more awesome free advice, tips, tricks, hacks, how-to guides, templates, and resources on branding, this channel is all yours. Hit subscribe, don't forget the little bell notification, tell your friends, like this video. If you have any questions, put it in the comments below, and we'll see you guys soon. Till next time.